Hey everyone, it's Marshall Mathers IV here, and in today's video I am going to talk to you guys today about my early life experiences since birth. Even though I don't have any memories of being born or even being 1 or 2 years old, and my earliest memories that I do have are when I was 3 and 4 years old in the year 2000 and 2001. But anyway, I was born at 1:12 a.m. on February 12 in the year 1997 in Princeton, New Jersey. And even though I was born there, and that is my birthplace, I was not raised there or anywhere near Princeton, New Jersey. And I find it honestly kind of funny that I was born in such a place such as that, even though I didn't even live there a year of my life. And even if I did, I definitely would not have had any memories of it at all. And the only reason my parents were even there is because my dad at the time was thinking about and trying to either work for or work with this one guy who is extremely rich, famous, and popular. And I mean, he's even been on the news plenty of times, and he was gonna try to either work for him or with him, but that never ended up happening as the guy was too busy at the time, and my dad and mom both decided to just move to Grand Rapids, Michigan. And they moved there about 6 or 8 months after I was born. So I was born in February of 97. They moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan in about August of 97. Or August, September of 97. Still the year I was born though. And they lived there for 4 years till sometime in 2001. So I did live in Grand Rapids for only the first 4 years of my life. And I don't have, like I said, any memories of being 1 or 2 years old in 98 or 99. My earliest memories are from 2000, 2001 when I was 3 and 4 years old. And it honestly pisses me off that out of any city in any state here in the godforsaken country of America that I could have and should have been raised in, that I didn't even get to, at the very least, get to be raised in Grand Rapids, in the city of Grand Rapids. And it honestly breaks my heart. It crushes me. It causes me a lot of pain, torment, torture, agony, emotionally and mentally, knowing that it was very possible that I could have been raised in the city of Grand Rapids, since I was pretty much a baby, as my parents still moved there the year I was born. Like, they moved there before I was even 1 year old. And yet I didn't even get to be raised there, except for the first 4 lame years of my life. I didn't even get to go to kindergarten there, or anything like that. Nothing of that sort. And, you know, I used to really love Grand Rapids, and I used to really love a lot of things about it, and I used to be very attached to it, very interested and fascinated with it for so many reasons. And I longed to go back, especially when I was 15 in 2012, when those memories came back. But now that I'm in my early 20s, 23 and almost 24, I hate the fuck out of that city and any of the goddamn bitch ass people who live there, except of course my family, which is like the only exception. But other than that, like, I pretty much just about hate everyone there. And I'm not even kidding. I'm being honest with the way that I actually feel when it comes to cities in any state here in America, in this wretched nation, and the just spoiled, privileged, blessed, lucky, fortunate people of all races that have been able to be raised in a city unlike and compared to me, that I will probably never stop hating, never stop being jealous and envious of, and never stop being angry as fuck at, since they got to obviously and clearly experience way more things than I could have ever imagined myself in my life personally. But anyway, so in 2002, my parents moved out of Grand Rapids and to Vining Road in Greenville, or near Greenville, Michigan. And, you know, when my parents did live in Grand Rapids, and when I did get to live there for the first 4 lame years of my life, which was barely anything, the reason they lived there is because my dad had worked there, and he was trying to apparently become a surgeon or something, but that never ended up happening, and he didn't really even seem to like it that much himself. And so that is why we didn't get to pretty much stay living there, because he was pretty much let down from that job, like fired or just simply let go. Either he was fired or just simply let go, because he didn't really seem too fond of the work that they were wanting and expecting him to do. And so he eventually wound up, in the long run, becoming nothing more than a prison doctor, which honestly breaks my heart, because when it comes down to it, I would have much rather preferred him to even have become a psychiatrist, where he could have earned, I don't know, $200 or $400 an hour, especially raising a family of 8 kids. I mean, only making $80, 95, or even $100 an hour was not ever enough. But anyway, so we moved to Vining Road in 2002 when I was 5 years old, and we stayed there for a decade. And while living there, of course, knowing that I was only 5 when we moved there, I liked the house. I thought it was nice, and honestly, it was probably the nicest house we ever lived in, other than the house that we used to live in Grand Rapids, which I don't even remember the address to, but I do remember it was on Sibley Street. That's all I remember or recall about the house that we used to live in Grand Rapids, that I personally only got to live in for the first 4 years of my life. And I mean, it was fun and enjoyable while it lasted, but obviously it didn't last that long or that much or whatever. But I was still happy, because after all, I was still a kid when we moved to Vining Road in Greenville, or near Greenville, but in like sort of the outskirts of Greenville. And I mean, I honestly enjoyed growing up there. We had a cottage, we had lakefront, we had, I don't know, 15 or 20 acres or something like that. And even though we were definitely isolated in seclusion and kind of distanced from the rest of humanity, I still had a pretty fun childhood, even though I was pretty much my only friend. And I spent a lot of time going in the woods when we used to live on Vining Road, just by myself, all by myself, just kind of having my own thoughts about whatever, talking to myself as if I was talking to like other people, as I still do now as an adult. At least I have that thing still kind of in common as I did in my childhood. And, you know, I mean, I was a pretty happy kid for the most part. And growing up, I mean, I went to see a lot of movies. Like in 2004, when I was 7, I went to go see The Polar Express, which I really liked at the age of 7. I mean, I don't really like that movie anymore, but when I was 7, I definitely did. And when I used to like Christmas a lot as a kid growing up, even though I never got shit that I actually wanted for any of the Christmases throughout my whole entire childhood, or my birthdays for that matter, but I still got some things, and I liked that holiday. That was honestly my favorite holiday. I loved the music. I liked Thanksgiving. I mean, I liked a lot of things as a kid, and I was much happier, much more calm and at peace as a kid growing up. And also in 2004, I went to go see Passion of the Christ, which was an R-rated film, which is probably one of the closest things that I ever had to experiencing watching an R-rated film. But I went to go see it with my mom and my siblings at the time, and we sat in the very front row seat. And I remember, like, it was in Grand Rapids, and my mom and I were just bawling our eyes out from that movie. It's a damn good movie, and I really respect the movie director Mel Gibson. He is an incredible movie director. He is definitely talented in that line of work. And in 2005, I remember seeing the first Chronicles of Narnia movie, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, with my dad and my siblings, which I also really liked, and I still do like. I own that movie on Blu-ray, and I think that's a damn good movie. At least the first one is. I also enjoyed the second one. The third one, however, I don't really like or enjoy that much. I think the third one sucks. I mean, I guess there's some decent things about it, but overall it sucks. But I honestly do like the second one, even though it didn't make nearly as much money as the first film, or wasn't as well received, at least at the time anyways. But I like that movie, and I also have it and own it on Blu-ray, which is The Chronicles of Narnia Prince Caspian, also made by Disney, whereas the third film, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, is made by 20th Century Fox. But also in like 2006, I remember going to see with my dad when I was 9 years old. In 2005, I was 8, by the way. And in 2006, when I was 9 years old, I went to go see another Mel Gibson movie, just released 2 years later after Passion of the Christ, which was Apocalypto, which I really love and actually remember a lot of that movie, even though I haven't even seen it or even watched clips of it since I was 9 and in 2006. And I would definitely, if I ever do have or get the money, I would love to buy it someday, because that is a damn good movie, also directed by Mel Gibson. And I remember my dad and I went to church before seeing that movie, and then he like told me a little bit about what the movie was going to be about, and like it was very interesting and fascinating. I was definitely blown away by the movie, even though I was only 9 years old and it's an R-rated film. I still saw it and I fucking loved the shit out of it. And even though I was only 9 at the time, I was just obsessed with it at the time, and definitely attached to it. And then in 2007, when I was 10, I went to go see the movie Ratatouille, which I also really like. I don't like that many kids movies, I'm not gonna lie, because many kids movies that I would either have liked at the time or still would, have been just all around ruined for me because of having guy characters burping or farting in them. Like, I would like Toy Story 2 if it didn't have the scene where Al burped or whatever in Woody's fucking face, which I find incredibly gay. And I would like the movie Monsters Inc. if it weren't for Mike Wazowski swallowing the microphone and then burping it back up like the faggot character he is. I also would like Finding Nemo, but that movie is ruined for me too, because Bloat, the stupid blowfish, had to burp not once but 2 fucking times in the same damn movie. And even if it was just one time, it still fucks it up entirely for me because he's a guy character. I would be absolutely fine with females or female characters in movies or TV shows always being the ones to burp and fart, but I guess that's not ladylike. But it just annoys the fuck out of me. It really irritates me so much that these gay faggot ass homosexual movie directors and producers and all that shit have to even add and include such overrated, overused humor, toilet humor to be exact, that's not even original. Like, why the fuck do they have to constantly show us that shit? Like, constantly reminding us humans of our bodily functions. Like, seriously, as if we already don't do it enough in everyday life. But it's like, no, they clearly have to put it in movies. And in my opinion, it's just such lazy humor, because it's overused, overrated humor that is just lazy. And there is nothing original about it at all. Like, they can't even come up with anything new. Nothing. They just have to recycle the same old bullshit every time. But anyway, I like the movie Ratatouille because it didn't have that shit in it. And a lot of kids' movies don't. But sadly, a lot of them do. And which is why I mostly like R-rated films and like PG-13 rated films more than I like fucking bitch-ass kids' movies. Even when I was young, I hated the fuck out of that shit. But, in 2008, I also went to go see the movie WALL-E, which I also really liked. And in 2008, I was 11. And in 2008, I also went to see, G.I. Joe, Rise of the Cobra, whatever, with my dad and some of my siblings, and I really liked that movie. I thought it was pretty dope. And as well as WALL-E, which I also really liked. And in the following year, in 2009, I went to see the movie Up, which is another kids movie I like. And it doesn't have fucking overused, overrated fucking toilet humor, which is lazy in the first place. And, I mean, there's honestly a lot of kids' movies I do like that don't have that shit in it. But I went to see a lot of movies growing up as a kid, and that was definitely probably one of the funnest things about my childhood, one of the highlights about it. But anyway, I'm gonna backtrack a bit. So we moved to Vining Road when I was 5 in 2002. And when we moved there, I started doing like homeschooling, and then I tried to go into first grade when I went to this one private school in the town of Greenville, but they felt like I wasn't ready, even though when I did homeschooling kindergarten first, I already completed all the books, and it was so damn easy. Even when I was 5, that work was just easy as fuck, and I just ran through those books like they were nothing. And so when I tried to go to first grade, they felt I wasn't ready, so they held me back. And so I went to kindergarten, and I got picked on by a lot of the boys there. I didn't really have any guy friends, but I did have this one friend who was a girl who felt bad and sorry for me, and she was the only one who was actually like sweet, kind, and nice, loving and caring to me. She was white, of course, being Greenville, which is a predominantly white town, and especially at the time, I think it was pretty much all white. And I remember in kindergarten when I was 5, when I tried to play with the guys, they were like, go play with yourself. And then there was one time I was eating a lunch, and my mom bought this one health bar from this one health food store in Grand Rapids, and she put it in my lunch. And one of the boys said, what is that, poop or whatever? And then I felt bad, mainly bad for my mom, because I loved her a lot, especially when I was younger. And I mean, I still do pretty much the same, not gonna lie. And I went up to tell the teacher, who was a woman, and she said, don't be a tattletale. So I didn't really have the best experience in kindergarten. I mean, it didn't totally suck, but I mean, there was definitely some shitty things about it. And then of course I went to first grade at a different school. I think it was like a public elementary school. And the first school that I went to was a private Christian school or private Catholic school or whatever. And then when I went to first grade, I went to a public school, completely different school in a different area of Greenville. And I do have some memories about that, but not many. And I mean, one kind of interesting thing is, I do remember when I was in, it was either first or second grade, I'm pretty sure it was first grade though, there was a girl, and she was Hispanic or whatever, Mexican, Latino, whatever you'd call it, and she liked me. And honestly, what I find really shocking and interesting about myself is that when I was a young kid, even when I was really young, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, that's when I got the most attention from girls. Like, honest to God, I'm not even kidding. Like, girls liked me at that time in my life, like the very most out of like any time in my entire life where so many girls like would try to chase me or literally throw themselves at me or just look at me all seductively, even when they were little kids themselves. And as a kid myself, I was not in love with any girls. Like, I didn't have any attraction to them whatsoever. Even if I was their friend, I didn't ever like girls. I just maybe liked them as friends, and that was about it. Just as I would like guy friends. But when girls would try to like flirt with me or look at me or whatever, it just made me feel so uncomfortable, and it made me cringe, and I always wanted to like hide and get away. And this one girl, when I was in first grade, she liked me. I mean, she never really said anything or did anything, but I remember one time when I was in like first grade, I had a friend, and I said to him outside during recess, I said, hide me in the trash, and then he was like, why? And then I saw her coming out along with the other students, and then she looked at me and started smiling, and so I just started to pretty much run away. And then that's pretty much the only sort of big experience I had about like being in first grade. And I don't really remember that much about second grade for some reason, but third grade I do remember really well. When I was like 9, 10 years old going into third grade, I remember going there along with one of my younger brothers, the one who's 2 years younger than me, not my youngest, but my other younger brother. And we were both crying, and my mom was dropping both of us off, and we were crying, pretty much holding on to our mom, kid shit, of course. And I mean, I didn't even want to go to school, especially in 3rd grade, because I knew that not only were we late, especially for our first day, but whenever you're late, students are just so rude. Even when they're little kids, if you're late to class, they just all have to look at you like you're an alien or from another planet. And I remember going in the classroom, and all the students were looking at me, and I just felt really awkward. And I was just thinking in my mind, like, look at your own damn homework and stop fucking looking at me. Like, what is so interesting about me that you have to stare at me about? And, but there were definitely some things I did like about going to 3rd grade. Like, there was this, even when I was in like 3rd, 4th, and I think even 5th, there was this really nice, kind, sweet, loving, caring, sort of like a special ed sort of woman teacher that I went to her like classroom for a little bit every day, and I really loved her. Pretty much like another mom to me, and she was, honest to God, like an angel. I mean, I'm serious. She was like the most loving, caring, sweet, kind person I ever met, other than my mom. And I always enjoyed being able to get out of my main classroom and go to her classroom along with a few other students. And you know, I also have like a memory of being in, was it 3rd grade? I think it was 3rd grade, where one time my younger brother and my mom gave us money to buy hot lunch, but I forgot that I had it in my locker, and then we had to have cold lunch, and then we were crying a lot in front of the principal, and who was a woman. And then I remembered that, oh shit, I do have money, it's in my locker. And then we had to like scarf down the food because it was almost recess. And also, when I was in 3rd grade, one memory I also do have is when I made a friend with this one Mexican guy. And the closest thing I ever really had to experiencing diversity when I was a kid, personally growing up, like when I was 10, for example, in 2007, when I was a 3rd grader, there was a Mexican guy and a Mexican girl, and of course they liked each other, liked each other. And at first I was friends with him, but then he kind of turned on me, and he had like a white friend who would pick on me in the hallway, and they would trip me a lot when we would be like lining up to go somewhere. So I remember one time I stayed home, and I was telling my mom, and the principal, who I think was a genuinely good person too, she had actually called our home phone number when we lived at Vining Road. And she asked me why I didn't come to school today, because she actually cared, which I thought was really sweet of her. And I said because, and I named the students' names, have been bullying me and picking on me and tripping me and all that. And then she took it upon herself to pretty much go to the classroom and make them apologize to me over the phone. And I just think that is the funniest thing. And they both apologized pretty much at the same time. And even just looking back, I think it's so funny that I know I probably embarrassed the shit out of them. And I I just think that's kind of funny, honestly. But I mean, that it's kind of stupid, but I don't know, it's just kind of funny. I don't know. I don't know why I think it's funny. Like when I think about past memories like that, for example, I do think they're pretty funny, but anyway, also, like, I also liked the Mexican girl that he liked. In one time I was staring at her and she caught me, and she started passing this sort of message around that eventually led to one of my friends asking me if I liked her. And I was so embarrassed that she caught me looking at her, and I was like, no, I don't like her, or whatever. Or I just said no, kind of like, no, obviously not. And one time, it's funny because she saw me at McDonald's one time with my mom, and the next day at school started calling me McDonald's boy over and over and over again, to the point it was so annoying. And I wanted to tell her to shut up, but of course she didn't. And there was another girl, a white girl, who had a sister, and she had like blonde hair, and she would literally try to chase me outside during recess because her sister started dating this one guy. And then she said to me one time, well, since she's with him, you have to be my boyfriend or whatever. And she would literally chase me, and I ran from her. And I was not having any of that, especially not as a 10-year-old. And it was weird. And I remember this one time where she gave me this cookie, and of course this was way before I ever knew I had any food sensitivities, and it was a cookie with like, but in the shape of a ghost with frosting or whatever, and she said, the ghost wants you. Just weird, cringy shit, but I mean, she was a kid after all. I took the cookie, of course, but I did not like her. I'd take the cookie, and I liked the cookie, but I did not like her. And even before going to school, I had grandparents that were from California, and I went to go out living with them for a bit. And I actually remember, I think even I went out there even during maybe, what was it, kindergarten or first grade or something like that, when I was like maybe 5 or 6. I can't exactly remember, but I do remember like the first train ride I ever had was when I was 6 years old in 2003, back in the good old days. God, I miss the 2000s. And of course my grandpa, who passed away in 2017 at the age of 79 because of a stroke, January 1, 2017. And rest in peace to him, but he was the coolest grandpa I ever had. And my first grandpa died when I was born. The year I was born, in 1997. He got to hold me, but he died the year I was born, and I don't even remember him or being held by him, but he did get to hold me. And my mom tells me, like, when I would see him at the airport, my other grandpa, who was my mom's dad, like, my face would light up when I would see him, and he died of colon cancer, which is really sad. And I think he was a good guy, but he died a long time ago. But I do kind of find it interesting how both of my grandpas died 20 years apart. I find that kind of interesting. My first in 97, the year I was born, and my other one in 2017, which is 20 years later, which is kind of crazy to think about. But when I took the train to California, I mean, that was definitely fun, and I made friends with this boy on the train. I don't remember his name or anything about him except that he was a white boy, and he was a good kid though, and I'm glad I made friends with him, even though we never saw or met each other again, and I don't remember his name. But I remember when I was like either 5 or 6 and I went to go live with my grandparents, which was really fun, and I really enjoyed and loved that a lot. They had a lot of classic Disney movies, some of my favorites, honestly, on VHS. They had just tons of VHS movies, and I honestly miss those VHS tapes. They were something else. I mean, honestly, it's kind of weird, but I remember as a kid loving to smell the what is it called? Like the covering or part that you open up to take out the VHS tape. I remember used to love smelling it. I just loved the smell and got sort of like, not necessarily high, but I just felt good smelling it, even though it was probably not good I was doing that, especially knowing I did that a lot. And I remember there was this girl who lived right next door to them who was like pretty much the same age as me, either that or maybe a year or two younger or older, or I don't know, but she liked me. And it's like, it's just funny how even when I was like 5, 6 years old, so many girls in so many different places liked me. And it's like, when I was a little kid, I got the most attention from girls. But then when I became a teenager, that all changed. The time when I actually did want a girl, which I find in a way kind of funny. Sad, but kind of funny. But I remember I was watching a movie in my grandparents' coast house in California, and I remember she came over and she wanted me to go over to her house, like a complete stranger. And I was hoping my grandparents would get me out of it, but then they said, oh, go over there. And the movie I was watching, she was like, oh, I have that movie at my parents' house. So I went over there to her house. I went in, her parents had a hot tub, and then she started going on about a little kid. I just don't honestly get this, why girls are like this. Even when they're little kids, it seems they're like this. But she was talking about like our wedding day and all this shit and like planning it out and whatnot. And I was just like, awkward. What? You're talking about this shit and you're like, what, 4 years old? Maybe 3, 5, 6, I don't know, 7. It's like, what the hell? Like, why are you already talking about like your wedding day and getting married to me of all people? Like, and I'm sorry, but I don't like you. Especially like as a kid, I wasn't attracted to girls, at least not usually anyways. And I mean, it was definitely weird, and I cringed the whole time. But I also remember when going on the train ride to California, like, I used to actually pee a lot, when I would go to sleep and wake up in the morning, even though I would try to go to the bathroom before going to bed, and I would, but then every single time, and I guess all kids have this problem, so it's not really that big of a deal, but I peed my bed a lot growing up as a kid, like at least until, I don't know, age 9 or 10, maybe 11 at the oldest, I don't know, but and I did that on the train, and I felt so embarrassed, ashamed, and humiliated. Even though I was only 6 years old at the time, I felt so embarrassed and humiliated. And one of the train workers, whatever you would call them, had to like strip the bunk bed or whatever, and I was just really embarrassed. But I changed my clothes, and I remember my grandma looking at the mirror and just embracing me and saying, "Who's that young handsome man?" And I felt just like dirt at the time, knowing that I did that, especially on the train. But I also did that a lot at their farmhouse, and I did that for many years in my childhood. I just had a problem doing that. I don't know why, but I did. I also, even as a kid, remember having, when I would go to sleep, a lot of cramps when I would wake up. Even as a kid, even though I didn't work out as a kid, Like, I remember one time I was at the farm, and I would get cramps, and then I would start crying in my sleep, and then I would wake up, and then I would like soak my legs in like hot warm water to soothe the pain. Now, I also remember actually growing up as a kid, and I don't know why I had this problem, but I never had it in my teens and not even in my 20s, but as a kid I had this problem a lot where I would go to sleep and I would wake up and my eye boogers were so strong they would literally keep my eyes shut. Like, I could not even open my eyes. Like, there was so much eye boogers to the point where even when I tried to open my eyes, and I would freak out, and other people would have to help me to the bathroom so I could take a washcloth and wipe my eyes out. But anyway, and like, I had a pretty interesting experience as a child, that's for sure. And you know, one thing I do, even as far back as like 3-4 years old, when I lived in Grand Rapids, I had a bunch of Thomas the Train toys, and I really liked collecting as many of those like magnet trains as possible, having the train tracks, and having like little wooden figures of like Sir Topham Hatt and some of like the people characters. And I would also sometimes get the movies. And I also, as a kid, even as young as 3-4 years old, I became obsessed with ancient Egypt, obsessed with mummies, obsessed with ancient Egyptians, and I would try to get as many books on that as possible. And I honestly kind of idolized ancient Egypt. I liked Thomas the Train as a little kid. I grew out of that phase really quick though, and then I got into ancient Egypt, and I also was really obsessed with sunken ships. I was really into that as a kid, and I thought that was really cool. Both of those things I thought was really amazing. Like ancient Egypt, mummies, the ancient Egyptians, how they looked, sunken ships. I definitely liked movies. I also liked Hot Wheels a lot as a kid. And also, but anyway, some of my other experiences growing up, like when I was in 4th grade, for example, I remember one time there was this, well, one of the memories I have in 4th grade, one of my favorite, honestly, there was this girl, and she was taller than me, but either she was like a year younger, maybe 2 at the most, or I don't think she was older than me, but she was taller than me, and she was fine. And I remember one time, and this is like the earliest memory I have of knowing, even as young as, like, how old was I? Probably 11, almost 12 years old, or 10, almost 11, in 4th grade, like before spring break, the last day of school before spring break. This girl got so excited, she started burping in my ears, and I put my hands over my ears, but I was turned on by the fact that she was doing that, and she was trying to pull my hands down, but I could hear it, and I was turned on by that shit. I also remember a similar memory in 5th grade when I was literally still a kid. This one girl, another girl, burped before going outside for recess, and I got an erection, and then as soon as I went outside, I started humping the pole. And then I remember her saying, even to this day, telling me to stop humping the pole. And I was a kid. I mean, think about it. I was a kid at the time, and yet I was turned on by that stuff. But anyway, I'm gonna have to make like multiple parts of my childhood experiences, but this will probably be part 1. But let me know what you all think in the comment section down below. I'm out.